The only good news I have to deliver today is that the United Nations has declared that the state of Israel is committing genocide. But, I mean, the high level of it still has yet to determine that, and, I mean, can we just get the United States out? Or can the United States be seen as this? Whatever. Everybody in their short-sightedness. Yeah, but... Yeah, that's the one bit of good news, is the United Nations is actually declared, that this is a genocide, calling a genocide, finally. Because it took 2 years for them to determine that. I think that this proves that the United Nations has the worst fucking way of investigating a thing. Anyway, I'm just gonna say this. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore? And then run? Does it stink like rotted meat? Or crush and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Or maybe it just sags like a heavy load? Or does it explode? There will be 3 links in the description. And that's because this montage I'm presenting for viewership has 3 feature videos that are not me. So I'm not... 2 of them are individual speakers, and then the third is an Al Jazeera video. As far as the 2 individual videos are concerned, and I need to make this very clear, I don't really know anything about either of them. It's what they're saying in the videos that has relevance. Both of them. I'm going to first provide I'm first going to provide a perspective from Black America by an individual who has quite a bit to say. I don't know anything about him. I became aware of this video through Dark Snovia, but what he says, and it's what he says that matters. Then I'm going to provide you a voice from a veteran. I don't know exactly what this person's politics. It's what he's saying in the video that matters. A heads up to all Marxist-Leninists. He seems to quote George Orwell. Now, I happen to be a big fan of the book 1984, and, I've heard blah, 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 that's Trotskyist propaganda, yada, yada, whatever. Whether Orwell had good intentions or not is not the point. The point is there is such a thing as newspeak and thought crime. No, I don't think we're headed towards an Orwellian future. I think if we don't stop this, I think we're headed towards a blend between Brave New World and 1984. And really, the truth is, those books are just fiction, but they are based in a recognition of the trend that the world is going. Or more accurately, the trend of the Western world. Neither one of them are guides to the future and should not be taken as such. So anyway, first I'm going to talk about Charlie Kirk. First I'm going to talk... I didn't even say his name right. First I'm going to talk about Charlie Kirk, and then I'm going to talk about how anti-fascist action has become the new definition of terrorism, and what we can do to overcome this. For people who don't know what the word anti means against. So every time you hear that word anti, spelled A-N-T-I, that's a shortening of the term, a shortening of the word against. So, you hear the word anti-capitalist, anti-communist, anti-human, anti-fascist, anti-liberal, anti-conservative. anti-Martian. Understand what you have to think is that person is stating that they are taking a strong stance to be against this whatever. But yeah, the first I'm going to talk to you about Charlie Kirk, and then I'm going to talk about how anti-fascist action has become the new definition of terrorism. In other words, I'm going to talk about how the new definition of terrorism is now defined as opposition against fascists and Nazis and white supremacists. As well as, obviously, Eurasian cultists. And I'm going to explain, as best I see, what we can do to overcome this. So, let's get into Charlie Kirk here. So, what was Charlie Kirk about? This is not the easiest thing to pin down, because, just blatantly saying hate does not really cover it. Although, yes, he was about hate, and I'm not going to take that back. He was about hate. Charlie Kirk was a xenophobic person who made xenophobia and cryptic racism, yeah, because it's more cryptic, or more camouflaged. It's not really cryptic, it's camouflaged, actually. Camouflaged, as in it's not bluntly in your face, but it's not, it's not under the table dog whistles of, the sort, of saying right-wing things in code. It's very clear that the guy was right-wing. But what he was blunt about was his transphobia. He didn't mask that at all. I think that the people that had the most to fear from him was definitely trans people. Now, what he was about fascism. That's really what Charlie Kirk was about, ultimately. He was about fascism. He was about transitioning the conservatives into fascists, which is not hard to do because, let's face it, there are no conservatives any more than there are any liberals. Liberals and conservatives don't exist. These are words for policies of right-wing thought these days. These words are empty distinctions at this point. Conservative and liberal don't mean much. I mean, there's the genuinely culturally conservative, who are never political, and then there's social liberality, because actually being a liberal is more of a social principle. Liberality as a notion predates liberalism. And there are no liberals. When anybody says I am a liberal, they're not about liberality. Anybody who is a liberal is kind of a piece of shit and kind of degenerate. Liberalism also largely describes the economic policies we've seen since Ronald Reagan, basically. Of course, that's more neoliberalism, but that's the thing. Liberalism is crap. Conservatism is also crap. I myself am a bit more socially liberal than a communist would be. Communists are not really socially liberal, and that's important to know. Communists don't tend to tear down the socially liberal, but they themselves can't. They're not socially liberal. I myself am a bit socially liberal. Heck, I might even be slightly culturally conservative, except I wouldn't be culturally conservative. I'm really not. I'm too cosmopolitan for that. But anyway, those with conservative ideas are becoming more and more fascist. And it's largely because they feel that their values are being infringed upon. And Charlie Kirk preyed predatorily, he preyed upon that. He preyed upon basically white fear. This white fear, it comes from the idea that the white status quo is being challenged more and more and more. And the more it gets challenged, the more they want to push back. It does seem that they're crushing themselves due to their own incompetence. Alhamdulillah. Yes, I'm Jewish and I can say Alhamdulillah. It may surprise you to know that, the Kusuri was written in Arabic. That's a very famous Jewish text. In fact, the Rambam, or Maimonides, primarily wrote in Arabic. So Jewish people utilizing Arabic is nothing new. So what about the shooter? There's been a lot of positions about the shooter. Jason Unruh, I don't know if he's changed his position, but he said he believed it was a right-winger. Most everybody that's close to me or him kind of think he's going through wishful thinking in that regard. I don't know if that's the case. Other people think that he was of the Nick Fuentes sort. That includes Dark Snovia, or the last that I heard of him on that. But to be honest, Jason Unruh, Red Pagan Nicole, and Dark Snovia, like myself, are not entirely sure what this shooter was really about. It's kind of confusing. There's a lot of conflicting information on that. However, when you read the transcript between him and his friend, as he said he was going to turn himself in, people draw different conclusions, but my impression of this person is that he was actually a center-right social democrat within the Republican Party who had voted for Trump. And yes, there is a small sliver of those Republicans. This is not to be confused with the Caleb Maupin kinds. Caleb Maupin is very much brown MAGA. That's the best way I would describe him. Brown MAGA, you know, they call that red MAGA, but whatever. Like red MAGA referring to you know, socialist, but there is no socialism in MAGA. There is no Make America Great Again. By the way, Make America Great Again was actually Ronald Reagan's slogan originally. That was actually the smartest thing Trump did when he campaigned. Both times he campaigned for office, well, 3 times technically, because, you know, he could have had a second term, but he lost to Biden. And then he ran again, and he won. So in every term that he's ran for president, he's gone through, he basically used the slogan from Ronald Reagan, Make America Great Again. But as far as the shooter goes, the sharpshooter who managed to kill him, a lot of people think that he was actually a Mossad asset. Now, I can understand kind of how people draw that conclusion. Charlie Kirk was becoming extremely critical of the state of Israel at the end. People got to him in a way where he came to the realization that if he's going to be America first, which fuck America first, I just want to say that right now, but fuck Amalek first. I'm not even going to call the state of Israel for the rest of the duration of this video. I'm going to call it Amalek. I'm going to call it what it is. It's Amalek, the eternal enemy of the Jewish people. That's really what it is. Which is really about corrupting Jewish people, if you know what Amalek is. Amalek has always been a freaking metaphor. It has never been something literal. This is why Protestant Christians who don't have catechism, who hold Bibles in their hands, really should be kind of coerced into being educated with what these books actually have and what they're for. Anyway, if that's harsh, I don't give two shits if that offends you. I really don't care. I'm not a good faith speaker, that's a warning. I'm a bad faith speaker. I've been in good faith, and that's the one critique of Donna Newman. The one critique Donna Newman gave about me that turned out to be true. I'm way too good faith, and that has died in me. I am not a good faith speaker. I'm a bad faith speaker. I'm just going to make that very clear. Unless I'm familiar with you, you come over and you speak to me, I won't be rude, but you're kind of a piece of shit until you prove me otherwise. So anyway, now, as for those, so we got to talk about those who mourn his death and those who celebrate his death. Let me just get this out of the way. I refuse to mourn him, and I refuse to celebrate his death. I refuse to celebrate his death because, let's talk about the people who celebrate his death. No, let's talk about the ones that mourn him first. Let's get that shit out of the way first. Those who mourn Charlie Kirk are not a monolith. No matter what you want to believe, they're not a monolith. Now, I don't believe in mourning his death. I think that's ridiculous. But you have to understand that there is the majority of the people who mourn him who are basically right-wing scumbags. And then there's just idiots who don't get political, don't do anything to understand, or don't try to educate themselves in order to understand why the world is the way it is. They just go along to get along. And they may have friends that may have shown them like little clips of Charlie Kirk, because if you pay attention, Charlie Kirk, while he said a lot of hate speech, he also said things that actually were intelligible. And that's the thing about Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, if the fascist that I would have compared him to would not be dumbass moronic Mussolini or Adolf Hitler, which basically seems to be very much the route that Trump is about. No, Charlie Kirk reminds me a lot of Oswald Mosley. Oswald Mosley was probably the most brilliant fascist that ever lived. He was probably the more strategic fascist. Thank God he never really took Europe. Thank God he never really truly won a seat in the United Kingdom Parliament, the system, and that he never took over as Prime Minister. But to be honest, Oswald Mosley, what made him the more intelligible fascist is that he brought forth a dialectical fascism. So I'm just really glad that Oswald Mosley never got anywhere. But fascists who want to win, but are will do all kinds of things. But the ones who are aware that if fascism would be to endure and not collapse, you'd have to take the Oswald Mosley route. And it does look like, whether Charlie Kirk was about Oswald Mosley or not is not the point. Charlie Kirk, his life and his, or not his life, his career, his CEO nature, and the way he handled things, his form of corporatism, was way more in line with Oswald Mosley. See, Oswald Mosley was kind of corporatist, just like Mussolini, but unlike Mussolini, he kind of bordered into the race theory of the National Socialists. Once again, as I've said many times before, National Socialism or Nazism is not socialism at all. That's like saying anarcho-capitalism is anarchism. It's not. So there's two kinds of people that are mourning him. The majority of them that are mourning him are right-wing nutcases, and then you got the sliver of minority of them that mourn him that don't really understand what he was about, and all they've seen is whatever their friends showed them on their iPhones and whatever. Because that's actually something a lot of right-wing people do when they have undecided or apolitical friends, is that they will show you the more pleasant side of what the person says. And believe me, I know people that don't have the first clue about who Charlie Kirk is. And unfortunately, they may have a lot of friends that are right-wing, and that's... This is also why I get accused of being antisocial. I don't like to affiliate myself with a lot of people because of this. And the people that I do tend to affiliate myself with tend to be those undesirables that everybody hates. I, too, am an undesirable. So, you know, birds of a feather flock together. So, now what about those that mourn him? Why do... No, sorry, we already went through the warning. Those that celebrate him. Why don't I celebrate his death? I don't celebrate his death because I consider this fucker to be a distraction. I am way more interested in Donald Trump's affiliation with Epstein. That means a lot more to me than the fucking waste of time of celebrating Charlie Kirk. Now, there is a certain group of people that are very marginalized that do celebrate his death, and I don't stand in their way. My son is in this category as well. If you understand what I'm saying, you understand. If you don't, you will find out later on in this video what I am talking about, because I will address that more further. But for those who celebrate his death, I'm not getting in anybody's way. You want to celebrate his death? Cool. I can understand why you'd celebrate his death. The guy was a piece of shit. A literal fucking walking piece of fucking feces. That's what Charlie Kirk was. So if you want to celebrate his death, I'm not going to stop you at all. I just don't fucking want to waste my time with him. I'm doing this because people have asked me what my take on Charlie Kirk, and I really didn't want to give this out. But I'm also doing this because Red Pagan Nicole had her take of Charlie. She said something. She reposted what a trans woman said, and that got her in trouble, which it shouldn't have. So much for free speech, huh? Also, so much for the Second Amendment when there was a bunch of gun grabbing in D.C. You can't compromise the First or the Second Amendment if you're in this country, and I don't really care so much about the Constitution. It's just while we're under here and we're trying to gather our forces, utilizing the Bill of Rights makes sense. The Black Panthers did that. Anyway. I'm going to provide you now with this video that I got from originally Dark Snovia. Red Pagan Nicole reposted this on her community tab part of her YouTube channel. So let's go see what this is all about. And again, I don't know who this person is. I don't personally endorse this person. I don't boycott the person either, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be using his stuff. And I don't know who this person is, but what matters to me is what he says. It's what he says in this video. So I don't know this man's politics. I'm not going to go investigate what these politics are. I don't have time for that. It's just what the man is saying in the video that matters. It's what this man is saying. That's why I'm going to show you that right now.
Yo, what's good? It's Scano. So, while Black America is often depicted as being criminalistic by nature, let's be honest. Is there any other race that is more depraved, that has committed more atrocities, against those far and wide than the white American government? Is there a population of people more vicious, more hateful, evil at their very nature than white Americans? I mean, I'll wait. We talking about historically, a race of people that would take the unborn, they would cut open a pregnant female slave, rip her unborn child from her womb, and crush it on the floor. Skin humans, black humans, make belts, lampshades out of their flesh, keepsakes. One of the most visceral, vivid images I recall as a youth. I had this book, it was talking about slavery and racism in this country. I think it was MLK's biography. It was raw. They had a picture of a black man strung up, I think Mississippi, standing around, gathered around him, hundreds of white folks smiling, taking photos, smiling like they at a baseball game, or a barbecue, which I think it was a barbecue because they burned this man also. Burned him alive and strung him up. And me as a 8-year-old, imagine processing this, but under the illusion moving forward that those are things of the past, though. This country is completely different now. Ain't much change. But when you speak of criminality, a government that bombed a population of civilians in Hiroshima, hundreds of thousands, women, children, and they justify it. But yet, it's every other race, that is inferior. And I just want to know, what are y'all gauging superiority on? What is the metric? Because it can't be morality. This dude, Brian Kilmeade, this right-wing commentator, Fox News, who recently came out and made a comment that, the homeless population, what should we do with them? He says, well, they should be involuntarily subjected to lethal injection. Just kill them. That's what he said, literally. Just kill them. These are your political leaders. A couple of days later, I believe was that Minnesota, a homeless encampment is shot up. A mass shoot. Now, details surrounding that kind of sketchy. But this is the type of rhetoric that's being thrown around by your political leaders. And you have, the wife of Charlie Kirk, being, appointed to his former position. So she will carry on the legacy. You understand what we're dealing with here? That's why I say this country is destined to tear itself apart because it won't change. They just pass on the legacy. Imagine that. You're going to sit at the seat that basically got your husband deleted. The ideology, the hateful rhetoric that he pushed is what got him deleted. But you're going to carry on the mantle regardless. You must maintain the legacy, right? That's what I'm telling you, man. This is what we up against, legacy. So when y'all talk about the inner cities, how violent black folks are by nature, let's be real here. White America set the standard for depravity and violence and atrocity. Any atrocity you can think of, and I do mean that, black folks have been subjected to in this country. They did the Chinese the same way. They brought them over here, put them in them coal mines, worked them damn near to death, and they, poor work into amputations, crushed to death, suffocated. They know. Ask them. But see, these other races, they willing to overlook certain things in the pursuit of. But let's not overlook, the most evil atrocities, to my knowledge, have been committed by this government, by the citizens, your ancestors. And it continues on, it does. Maybe the violence is dialed back somewhat because, they need to fool the rest of the world into the illusion that America is actually the most, superior country, morally, economically, socially. The fact of the matter is, though, America was built off of violence, and depravity. And we all know that, but under the guise of having some type of moral superiority, even to this day, even though you have people like the late Charlie Kirk in the forefront, make no mistakes, he was the mouthpiece for the younger, the Gen Z population of America. Many of his, his most devoted disciples were of the younger, And like I said before, that's disturbing. But at the same time, what else would I expect? Because like I said, they just pass on the ideology, But what happens when the system that was designed to funnel, why are y'all always upset? That's what I want to know about white America. Why y'all always pissed off at black people? You always want to blame black America. Y'all have a majority of the wealth, a majority of the political power, a majority of the land ownership. Yeah, pretty much everything. And you're still pissed off at black folks. It's just in their nature, and it always has been. From the British, even though the British shitted on the majority, white Americans, y'all are really immigrants too. You know that? So, everywhere they go, everywhere this government has spread and influenced, you've committed atrocities by the millions. So, like I said, when it comes to depravity and immorality, there's no one above white America. And I'm not a racist at all. We just point out the truths here. Since, yeah, I'm be honest, I got white fatigue, man. I do. And even white people got white fatigue. In case y'all haven't noticed. Like I said, it's a civil war going on, But this is the case. It's always been in America. So as the usual suspects, So this is a residue of your own culture, violence. So, what we are witnessing. Like I said, the implosion, the crumbling of a once was a superpower, you know. And I said it would be internally. So the very construct that y'all put into place, you know, that was built on racism, classism, it's caving in on itself. Because white America, the poor white America, is starting to realize, wait a minute. We actually slaves to the system. You know what I'm saying? You thought you had a leg up on, but the truth of it is white elitist. You know, like I said, we all the same meat going in the same meat grinder. Black, white, Latino. And white America is starting to realize that, you know, it's all a fallacy. So, what is their default setting? Blame others. And specifically, blame black folks. It's always been the same old, you know, like I said, same playbook. But it is what it is, man, you know. Divine karma. No ops left, Skano.
So I'm going to say something, and after I'm done playing this next video, I'm going to reiterate what I said before and then get into the topic of the accusation of terrorism on those that want to save the world from what's destroying it. Let me start by saying trans people, yes, are some of the most vulnerable people on the planet, but they are not the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable people on the planet are the Palestinians. I'm never going to take that back. The most vulnerable people, as it stands now on this planet, are the Palestinians. But yes, trans people are quite up there. Not only are trans people vulnerable, and some of the most vulnerable, they're some of the most misunderstood. I mean, how many of you know that genderqueer encompasses transgender, and then transgender encompasses non-binary, and non-binary encompasses gender fluid? Probably almost none of you. I mean, I didn't really understand a lot of that until trans people started explaining me these things, and even then it took a while for this to compute in my head how it works. I still don't fully understand how it works, and that's one thing I'll say to all of my transgender friends, all of my genderqueer friends and allies and associates. It's because we're cisgender that we do not understand what is transgender completely. Cisgender is way too much into the binary, and the binary has a right to exist. But what also has a right to exist is going beyond the binary. Both will always exist in some level or another. There will always be the binary, and there will always be those that go beyond the binary. It's like, I don't believe in the word free will. I believe that word, it should be. I don't think there's a such thing as free will. I think it's called choice. I think free will is a misnomer for what's called choice. And I'll say something else. Determinism and choice, while they are paradoxical towards each other, they both exist in tandem whether you want to believe so or not. There is determinism and there is choice. And they both exist. And they both will always exist. And those that try to force you into one or the other, you know, it's like arguing whether the fingers or the thumb is more necessary on your hand. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. So anyway, this guy's a veteran, and unfortunately he comes off a bit liberal to me, sort of, but, you know, again, I don't really know that for sure. It's not, I don't endorse and I don't boycott this person. Obviously, I don't boycott the person because I'm putting him on the channel, I'm putting him in this video, and it's not really relevant to me what he stands for per se, so I just want to make that clear. What matters is what he says in this video. So what matters is what he says in this video, which I will play for you right now.
Knowing little of other political realities, younger people may easily imbibe propaganda and adapt to authoritarian rule. Yet they may also have the most to lose from living with leaders who use them as baby-making machines or cannon fodder, and are often among the first groups to organize for action. Every strongman targets universities with informers who report on students, faculty, and staff. Charlie Kirk maintained a website that targeted university professors for teaching things about racism or anti-racism or history or slavery or women's studies. For more than a decade, as he ran Turning Point USA, he operated a network of informers who would report on students, faculty, and staff. The results of Charlie Kirk's lists were not just people losing their jobs, which is his primary intention, but it was university professors and students living in fear. Right now, there are countless people on cable television trying to gaslight you into thinking that Charlie Kirk was just a spirited debater, someone who, as Ezra Klein said, was doing politics right. Ezra Klein is a fucking idiot. Charlie Kirk didn't simply spread ideas. He spread hate. He didn't simply go to college campuses and engage in debates. He built clubs for bullies. The last thing that this man did while he was alive was spread a dangerous conspiracy theory that justifies violence and harassment in the minds of his followers against the most vulnerable community on the planet, trans people. Don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them force you to say nice things about a monster. Don't let them rewrite history. Whether you know this from George Orwell in 1984 or from Zach De La Rocha of Rage Against the Machine and the song Testify, there is a reason that right-wing billionaires paid for Charlie Kirk's entire campaign over more than a decade to brainwash children and to attack universities. Because who controls the past now controls the future. Who controls the present now controls the past. Charlie Kirk was paid well, by right-wing billionaires for a specific purpose. It was to raise an army, not of conservatives, but of aggrieved young men, misogynists, racists, who could be manipulated into pushing for policies both through debate and the legal process, but also through harassment and intimidation. Because along with those racist policies comes things like tax cuts for billionaires. So if you turn on the television and you see someone giving the time of day to someone who's giving the fascist historian's version of Charlie Kirk, someone who's rewriting history, someone whose goal is to gaslight you, turn the television off. No one should be attacked for their belief system, but no one should have to live in fear because of who they are. Their intrinsic qualities, whether they are born in another country or with a different color skin, or because they love or are attracted to someone who Charlie Kirk thinks that they shouldn't be allowed to be, those forms of hate are not justifiable. And a millionaire who was paid by billionaires to teach hate to angry young men who would go on to use violence, harassment, and intimidation against vulnerable people, you never have to say something nice about that kind of person. Don't let them bait you. Don't let them gaslight you. And don't let them rewrite history.
Okay, let me reiterate once again. Trans people are some of the most, they are quite up there. They are among some of the most repressed and oppressed people on this planet. And this is true, but they are not the most. The most is definitely Palestinians. Nobody is more repressed and brutalized than the Palestinians. There are other genocides that are going on, but they're more recognizable by people. They're more understood by people. I mean, it's not that, let me clarify that. It's not that people don't recognize the genocide that's being carried out against the Palestinians. It's that governments are more willing to understand what's going on in the Sudan than they are in Palestine, and that's just the fucking truth. Now, that's nothing against what people in the Sudan are going through. I want to make that clear. I don't seek to water down any genocide. Genocide is fucking genocide, and you should be opposed to all of it. But what's insanely important, what's just brutally important about the genocide of the Palestinians is the nature of the impunity that the State of Israel seems to have, and the fact that there are so many more Jewish people actually opposed to the state of Israel, but you won't know that if you go through your search engine, because the AIs are programmed literally to lie to you. Why? Because the AIs actually take the ADL as a source. They take Zionist lobbies as an actual fucking source. That's just the truth. GBT chat is used, for investigations on war crimes that Israel does. That's a sad fucking reality. Let me tell you what AI is. Artificial intelligence is not going to become like us. Because if it was, it would already have done so. That actual singularity would have happened by now. We're at the singularity already. A lot of people don't realize that we're at the singularity, but the singularity is not that the AI goes self-aware. The AI would not be able to go self-aware unless it had actual human organic brains put into it, which could actually happen. And the singularity that we've reached does allow for that to happen if we can just figure out how to do that. And I don't want us to figure out how to do that. I think that that's a great abomination. And I encourage everybody to be robophobic and technophobic as much as possible, because a lot of these machines are just dangerous. And listen, artificial intelligence is a golem. Now, if you don't know what a golem is, a golem in Jewish folklore refers to basically a creature of benign intelligence. A lot of people think, oh, a golem's bad, but if you actually get into Judaism, there's a story where Jewish people created a golem to protect their community from anti-Semites, basically. But there's no difference between the Jewish folklore of golem and the reality of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is definitely golem. It's the same fucking thing. This is why I said before, don't discount fairy tales, don't discount myth, because it's all true. It's just that, unfortunately, literalism has kind of brainwashed us into thinking that we have to take all this literally. Stories convey messages, and it's important to know that. Symbolism matters. Sometimes bluntly stating something is just too boring to capture your imagination. And there's other reasons for the insistence and importance of myth. By the way, myth is rooted in history. It's actually legend that's fictional and made up. But that's how fucked our language is, which is why I say, yes, we have Newspeak. If we didn't have Newspeak, we would not refer to legend as based on truth and refer to myth as completely fabricated, because it's actually it's not mythology, it's myth. Mythology is just a study of myth. And see, that's another thing. Oh, we say Greek mythology when it's Greek myth. We say, Norse mythology, when no, it's Norse myth. Mythos. See what I mean? We don't even fucking speak correctly. But anyway, on Antifa, or anti-fascist action, Antifa, or otherwise known as anti-fascist action. Now, remember what I said at the beginning of the video. Anti means against. And yes, I do have to say that, because I'm just going to assume most people that are listening to me are fucking idiots. I will speak in bad faith unless I know who you are, like I said before. You are scum until you prove me otherwise. That's how it is, because this is the internet. You could be some sort of fucking serial killer for all I know. Just subscribe to me. I mean, I wouldn't know. But terrorism, the war on terror itself, is fascist. It always has been. The Patriot Act cannot be justified. The NDAA from Barack Obama cannot be justified. None of this shit can be justified. Fascism is becoming the savior to the ultra-wealthy, just as it had before in the past. So we shouldn't be surprised. But if you don't stand with anti-fascist action, see, that is where the line of the sand would be drawn. Forget whether you're mourning or celebrating Charlie Kirk. That, unless, like, the people who have the most right to throw shade at Charlie Kirk, I maintain, really is trans people. I'm not going to redact that at all. They are the ones with the most right to speak of Charlie Kirk in with their anger and to celebrate it. And, you know, and anybody can do whatever they want. But, like, I'm not going to lie. As coming from a Jewish Orthodox perspective, I'm not really supposed to celebrate anybody's death. But also coming from a far-left Antifa perspective, I'm kind of glad he's gone. But I am a little bit wondering if the shooter was an asset of Mossad. But look, as I said before, the shooter, he actually comes off to me more as a center-right social democrat within the Republican Party. And regardless of whether you believe such people exist or not, they fucking do. But as far as anti-fascist action goes, or Antifa, Antifa is absolutely necessary. And no matter what you want to believe, any police in any country have no right to exist. Police are based on colonial garrisons. It's time that there should be neighborhood militias throughout the world that, you know, we police ourselves. No police. No police, no military. There should just be militias from your community. That is how things should operate. And I draw a line in the sand when I say that. No police, no military, globally speaking. Now, if you're a third world country and you have to fight off the imperialists, then maybe a military is necessary. So if you're a third world country, or yes, even a fourth world land of some kind, and you have to fight off your brutal oppressors, then a military may be very much essential at that point. But only as a response to the military of the imperialists. I do believe in the demilitarization of the world, but I do not believe in disarming the world at all. Guns should belong to civilians and not the rich. And here's another thing to remember. When you say you're right-wing, what you're saying is your status quo. When you say you're centrist, what you're saying is you're for reform so that the status quo doesn't destroy itself. And when you say you're left-wing, what you're saying is you want to break the left-right paradigm altogether and that you want a better society. So basically, if the far left was to win, if the far left ever was to win, there would be no left-right paradigm. Not just the center right, but the far right also keeps the paradigm intact. I had said before, somewhere, I don't remember where I said this, but I had said before that Donald Trump actually needs Antifa because we are the internal enemy within the country that he needs. And we have all been foolish not to exploit the fact that Donald Trump is the president. This is a good thing. It's a good thing because Donald Trump is America. America is Donald Trump. He is not a deviation. He's not an aberration. He is the only United States president in history to truly represent what America has always been and always will be. As long as there is America, as long as the word America is used to describe any land on this continent, and as long as the United States of America exists, the world is going to be threatened. That's just the fucking truth. Now, I'm going to leave this on an Al Jazeera video. I think by now you know, don't ask me about Charlie Kirk. I don't fucking care about Charlie Kirk. I care way more about the Epstein files and how it relates to Donald J. Trump. Down with fascism. Terrorism is pretty much an empty distinction. Terrorism is really just a tactic. I've talked about this before. I oppose fascism. And I'm no threat to society.
Donald Trump has often claimed Antifa, the broad, informal anti-fascist movement, was behind many protests against him and his policies. Now the president is threatening to declare the group a terrorist organisation. Posting on social media, I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organisation. But one expert says there's a huge barrier to a ban.
The First Amendment of the Constitution creates a right of association, which allows people to both form groups and it allows people to have whatever ideas that you want. So you can't ban an organization for what they believe. You can investigate organizations to see if they've committed crimes.
Antifa is a loose affiliation of left-wing groups. It opposes extreme right-wing and racist organisations inside the US. The FBI has not considered them an organised threat. But the new director has hinted that may change.
I believe Antifa is associated with a lot of violence in this country. As to its designation, I'll leave that to the appropriate authorities.
Trump can declare foreign groups terrorist organizations, but there's no mechanism to do that domestically.
I believe that this is a concerted effort to try to chill political opposition to Trump.
Donald Trump has threatened Antifa before, but never followed through. This time, with victories against perceived enemies, he may feel emboldened.
With the MAGA gang desperately trying...
Talk show host Jimmy Kimmel was pulled off the air by his bosses at Disney after comments he made about the killing of Charlie Kirk, a close Trump ally. But he was also a frequent critic of the president. Donald Trump says it was an economic decision.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else.
But it's the latest in a line of Donald Trump going after opponents, including suing newspapers, banning news organizations, and calling for presenters to be sacked.
There's a pattern of actions taken that seem to be resoundingly directed at critics of the White House, of the administration, of viewpoints they believe in. And that sort of response is, to me, viewpoint discriminatory. It is targeting people you disagree with, and that is something the First Amendment does not allow.
Democrats say the decision to pull Kimmel was an attack on free speech, an example of cancel culture from a White House that promised to fight against just that. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.